A very good morning to everyone present here. Welcome to our national webinar on Role of Social Workers in Disaster Management. Today we have with us two eminent speakers for the session, Ms. Girija Kumar Babu and Professor Andrew Sesuraj. Before we move on to the session, I would like to give a small run-through of the ground rules. Kindly rename your Zoom username into your full name for easy recognition. Please turn off your camera and microphone during the session for optimum streaming quality. Post all your questions in the chat box mentioning the speaker of the session that you're directing the question to. The questions will be answered as per the convenience of time. There will be a feedback link circulated in the chat box at the end of the session. Please do fill in the feedback form without fail to record your attendance. With this, we'll move on to today's session. I request Ms. Banti Rani to deliver the welcome address for today's session.
A very good morning to all the dignitaries, guests, and my dear participants gathered today. A pessimist sees the difficulty in every opportunity, an optimist sees the opportunity in every difficulty. On behalf of the National Institute of Disaster Management, NIDM, PG Department of Social Work Shift 2, and Pegasus Student Forum, I delightfully welcome our esteemed chief guests of the day, Mrs. Girija Kumar Babu, Joint Secretary, ICCW Tamil Nadu, and Professor Andrew Sesuraj M., Assistant Professor, PG and Research Department of Social Work, Loyola College, Chennai. I'm very honored to welcome Dr. Ajinder Walia from NIDM, our respectful principal, Dr. S. Raja Samuel, our beloved head of the department, Dr. C. Francis, our supportive faculty coordinators, Professor J. Demon Queen, and Professor A. Priya Doris from Madras School of Social Work and other faculty members, welcoming you all. I'm sure it is going to be a lively and thought-provoking session for all of us. Last but not the least, I welcome the pillars of our support, my dear fellow students and all other participants for gracing this session with your presence. Once again, I welcome you all to the national webinar. Hope you all will have a knowledge-enriching session ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Banti, for that lovely introduction. Now I request Ms. Manna from second year to introduce our first speaker for the day, Ms. Girija Kumar Babu, to our audience.
Good morning to one and all present here. It is indeed my honor to introduce the speaker of the day, Mrs. Girija Kumar Babu. Ma'am's qualification, she's completed a master's in social work from Stella Maris College, Chennai. And some of the posts held by ma'am were the Honorary Secretary of ICCW Tamil Nadu, the Member of Juvenile Justice Board, Chennai, the Managing Director of Sangalp, Chennai, Member of the State Level Committee for Prevention of Trafficking in Women and Children, a part-time faculty from the Center for Social Initiative and Marketing, Chennai, chairperson of the subgroup on trafficking and child protection of Tamil Nadu State Planning Commission, and co-chairperson of the Committee on Child Rights and Child Protection, ICCW, New Delhi. She is also the chairperson of the Anti-Sexual Harassment Committee, Delphi TVS Company, and member of the Medical Ethics Committee from Sri Ramachandra Medical University and Savita Medical University, Chennai. She is also a member of the City Level Committee on Juvenile Justice, Chennai. Ma'am's incredible experiences include as a senior social worker in Artificial Limb Center, Government General Hospital, Chennai, a child welfare organizer in ICCW Tamil Nadu, fellowship with CRI, India, member of the Juvenile Welfare Board, Chennai, and currently the Honorary Joint Secretary of ICCW Tamil Nadu. Her significant experience in relation to the issue of child labor are: she's anchored 2 projects for the elimination of child labor in Shivagasi and Vellore district. She's also participated as a trainer in the Trainers Training Program for 2 weeks organized by ILO Italy, an active member of CACL and member of the Executive Committee of CACL in Tamil Nadu, member of the State Level Consultative Committee for the Prevention of Child Labor, Government of Tamil Nadu, India. Ma'am's works were recognized and was awarded the Best Social Worker Award by the Government of Tamil Nadu for the year 2009 with Chief Minister's Gold Medal and Citation, and also the Outstanding Woman of the Year 2009 to 2010 by the Inner Wheel Club, Madras Cosmos. Over to you, ma'am.
We'll change. That's right. You will. Yeah, can I? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Hello. Hello, everyone. Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm not able to see you all in my screen, but I think it's a very timely, apt session now that you are going, because we are going through two major disasters, and in the midst of it, we are asking what is the role of the social workers. So let's see that. Then you can ask me any question after the session is over, or even in between if you want to, you can do that. Okay. Now let's start with this. Okay. Now we have to go to the first slide. Ah. Yeah. Now, first, let's understand what we mean by the disaster management, because there is financial management, so many other branches of management. Then, what is this about the disaster? It is the organization and management of resources. Now, when we are actually going through a humanitarian crisis, and how we are going to face that. Uh, the second part of this definition is how prepared we are to receive, or does it come on without any of us realizing that we are going in for a disaster. Second is how we can respond to it. See, the response from, especially in Tamil Nadu, to the various other disasters that we have seen are brilliant. That's what I should say. Just quote from Chennai floods. We know that how the volunteering and people participation poured in to save the people who have been affected by the floods. So we do have a very healthy mindset for responding to any disaster for that matter. Now, where we are lacking is the recovery process and initially the preparedness, because a few of us may be prepared, but the knowledge must spread across to everyone in the community. Only then it is people have to be prepared for it. The fishermen have to be prepared for it. People who are living along the Kuam River, they have to be prepared for it. So it is actually those who are likely to be affected, they should be prepared. Communities must be aware that it can happen during these months every year. So that amount of, so once you start the process of preparedness, automatically you will come for what should be the response, how we can build our capacity to respond in a positive manner. And of course, recovery, we all know only what is the compensation given by the government, because we find that again, when a disaster happens, the same things are repeated. So our efforts towards recovery, I should say, are now very insufficient. Yeah. So you see that the different types of disaster, and for that, everywhere you will know exactly what happened. First, it can be geophysical, that is the tsunami, earthquake, all that stuff. And we have gone through a tsunami. All of us have worked during and after tsunami, and we know that how the impact is so large, and communities are involved. Great number of people are involved. Second is the hydrological, that's what we are going through, floods. And meteorological, once again, the heat waves, I think dust storms, all these are due to the weather conditions. Then you have the biological, and that is what we are again going through, that is the COVID. Earlier, when the Bhopal gas was leaked in Bhopal from the Union Carbide, people were totally unaware. They were sleeping in their homes peacefully, and slowly they saw, they were inhaling fumes. And once they came out, they saw that every other neighborhood is having the same thing. The entire city was covered with a fume. And it really took place. I should say 5 lakhs people were involved, or rather affected by it. Then you have the side, natural, man-made, and hybrid. Natural, you cannot help it, because in one way we are responsible for it, because we don't do things that we should do. and we are doing things that we should not do. We are tampering within nature and the process of nature. That's how now you see, very easy to see, you read in papers, the elephants are encroaching into the field. Tigers, sometimes we saw that sitting on the branch tree. All these things mainly because we are intruding into their livelihood. The forests are being systematically broken down. We are putting roads where we should not be building roads. All these are man-made. Many a time it is the man-made disasters which are really more powerful and affect more number of people. So what happens? Why they should be? What is the impact of this on children? Children are really the most affected, and sometimes it doesn't even come out that easily. Mainly because they are so young, and according to they breathe more air, and if it is not there, then their skins are so soft, and there's greater risk in case of fluid and body heat. That we all know. See, for instance, the Kumbhakonam school tragedy. At one time, because they were so young, they were in their KG classes, the teacher had locked the door from outside. So the door could not be opened, and by the time they could go in and then rescue, so many children were already 60 to 70% attacked, or rather the burn injury. So it becomes very, very difficult. Same thing happens in tsunami. Actually, I think we had to wait for nearly 36 hours before we realized that babies need different type of food. They need milk, they need some biscuits. These are the things a child can eat. But this understanding dawned on us after 36 hours, anywhere between 24 to 36 hours, because everywhere they are having kitchen, community kitchen. People were being fed, sometimes good food, different types of food kept on coming in. But that cannot be given to a baby. That cannot be given to a 2 years, 3 years child. What they needed was milk. We didn't know that. That was the greatest lesson, especially for people like us who are working with children, that the children need a different type of approach. I think that is the first lesson. As social workers, we should understand that we have a very important role, but we should also understand that, okay, so what happens? Let's see. 9 to 18% increase in acute illness. This is after they go through. They become susceptible to other types of infections also. As a result, they don't attack. See, you are seeing both at the present time. The schools are closed because of COVID. They are going through online classes from standard 1. These are, unimaginable after effects. But generally, one part of the population, children who are studying in government schools, they have just not gone to school for nearly now 9 months. So even if after the schools reopen, these children have difficulty in attending school because they are so very worried. This we saw in tsunami. The children did not want to go to school at all. They were in clusters, hanging on to the known people and to the parent if they survived, or to their aunts and uncles. So their interest in attending school was very, very low. To bring them back to a learning mode was very difficult. Even after bringing them to a learning, their attention is not sufficient. They are overburdened with some amount of stress, so they could not perform at all. Their cognitive understanding is definitely affected. Then you have recurrent sickness that we are seeing. The most important thing is we had this time, because of COVID, we had one or two things that directly affect children happen. One was the suicides. I hope you know that one boy committed suicide just one day before the exam, the net exams. He was so worried. He was under tremendous stress, saying that he will not pass. He never took the exam to know the result. We had to sacrifice him. So these type of impact you can see in any. Yeah. Okay. Now go to psychological. Whatever we are saying here is only half. The other real impact, you have to go to the field to see. 50% increase in post-traumatic stress disorder. They have identified a group of symptoms for it to be classified as PTSD, and we saw that it was there even after 6 months after tsunami. For some children, even after 1 year, they were suddenly go into isolation, becomes their mood gets disturbed, and they were into sleeplessness, lack of appetite. All this as part of the impact of the disaster on their psychological health. Then, of course, childhood depressions. Children became depressed. I think this is very, very important. This has happened even during COVID. In COVID, the one question that seems to haunt children is seeing the death of nearby their people close to them. So the final question is, what is death? How will I survive? Will my parents survive? I think these are all important questions for a child to understand. But they do see that somebody is in their family here today, then they go to the hospital, and then they don't come out of the hospital. Uh, Rather, they succumb to the disease. So this can be a very great trigger for psychological upsets. In learning disorders, different now. Fortunately, this time we didn't open the schools, but last time during floods or during tsunami, the schools were open because there was no problem with that. But children did not go it. Even after going, see one immediately after tsunami, I shouldn't say immediately, but as a tsunami after, UNICEF and lot of other NGOs, they started giving school materials, that is desks, blackboards, all these things, because everything was lost. So even though the school was there, they know that it has undergone a change, complete change. But the children were given bags, notebooks, so something that attracted them, that brought down their stress. So because of this, they also becomes other forms of violence, especially domestic violence and for girl children. Now also they are reporting that there is a tremendous increase in sexual abuse within families because the children are there and everybody is tense. And we had a very famous remark from a judiciary person saying that this you will have to expect. So should we be prepared for an increase in sexual abuse immediately after or during a disaster? I think that is the question that we are all fumbling to answer. And then what is this attachment problem? Children need an attachment figure. Generally, you will see it is the mother, especially up to 5 years. They have to be there and they have to see the person to whom they are attached, like the parent, the mother, or the grandmother, or the auntie with whom they are living. They have to see. But in tsunami, the mothers didn't come back. So that was a very great problem for children to face and tackle. They went through really problematic because, when in tsunami, the father was not there already. The mothers were heading the family. They died. They became a victim to tsunami, and the child suddenly became a total orphan. So very, very difficult for them to get back into their family or adjust with their aunt or grandparents with whom they were staying. And then, of course, behavioral problems. Lot of behavioral problems have been identified, and you will have to be sensitive to see this. Okay. What is this principle of first call? This is one of the values, or I should say the principles of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. This simply says, in times of emergency, in times of war, in times of natural disaster, children have the first right to be rescued. So, and we see that many a time we are reaching out not to the child but to the others. So this we'll have to very carefully remember, that the principle of first call. Then once, even now, see, 9 months, no school, lockdown, people are cooped up inside their homes, or they are in institutions where still the friends have all gone, few children are staying back, and the whole day is there, how to spend the time, in what way we can be engaged. So as social workers, it is our duty to learn how we can engage children in a meaningful manner. This is very important. I think this has happened even in COVID. Many social workers are in their community organizing groups of children and keeping them engaged in activities that sort of suits them, and they can spend their time in a useful manner. Then how do we reach out to the most vulnerable? See, the floods, yes, the other day there was a TV news saying that there are hardly 120 families and all of them were living in huts, and due to the floods, their entire hut has been washed away and they have lost their animals. Now, from where will they start? They are already living in a hut, and you know that what facilities they must be there inside a hut, and that is also washed away. So they become most vulnerable because they don't have the resources to come back first, and secondly they don't know how to respond to this total lack of facilities. Where will they sleep? That's what the women were saying. Where will we sleep? Where will we keep our children? And it is already 3 days that we have had any food. So these are very, very important. When, as a social worker, you enter an area, you will have to find out which should be the most vulnerable, which is far away from the rescue efforts, all cooped up inside the district, village, or on the outskirts of the village. It can be a tenement, or it can be a group of people, mostly the most scheduled caste people staying together, and that's what happens. So our efforts as social workers, we must always keep in mind how the others are also suffering. Or am I missing somebody? Am I missing a most vulnerable group? Because those who come close, they will get the benefits. And tsunami showed us that people come back and they are not really worried about the others. They come back because the anxiety and the fear that they will not have the facility make them come and take the donations from more than one person. So this is very, very important. Food, I told you, food for children must be very different from food for adults. Why this is important for social workers are, if you are going to be at the spearhead of planning and executing relief measures, then you will have to keep this in mind very clearly, that they need different type of food and of course clothing and shelter. And once you put the children or once you put the adults in shelter, it can be a temporary shelter or you can go into a government school or Kalyana Mandapam, whatever it may be, the children must not be separated from the parents. Now this became very huge problem immediately after tsunami, because the 2 days afterwards there was a clamor that all these children who lost their parents should be placed in adoption, and that we can come and take the children. Maybe we can take them to Andhra or this side Orissa or even to Delhi, and we will place them in very good families. But the social workers, it was a social workers group which represented why children should not be removed from the area of disaster, and that they should not be immediately offered for adoption, because that may not be in the best interest of the child. So we need to understand children have to be with the parents, at least either father or mother or with their extended family members, because not being with them will again give them much more anxiety. Okay, so these are small things, but that will have an impact on the children. Then, of course, counseling, social workers must equip themselves. What is taught in the classroom as a counseling will prepare you only for 30%. You may have some knowledge, but to go to a field, especially go to people suffering because of a disaster, you need special skills, how to cope, how to first face them, and a very large empathy you should have. Then only you will be able to meet them on not even an equal platform, you being a counselor, an enabler, whereas they are the affected victims. So the counseling skills have to be sharpened, and not only immediately after disaster, maybe even few years or few months after the disaster, we need. That's what happened in tsunami. People did not forget it. So the first Remembrance Day was so very traumatic for many of us who are working in that area. So it's very, you are seeing the same thing happening. No, Madras floods happened, and now this time again they let the water out. And the same area, the same people were affected that brings you back memories of how they suffered during the last floods. So thus we have to be very, very careful. So what is the role of a social worker? See, we said that we will have three different ways to look at it. One is being prepared. So this is where maximum amount of participation must be by the social workers, because the events that we are seeing, the process of uh, regimental or regular degradation of environment is for all of us to see. Now, once you are going to meddle with the environment, with nature, it will definitely have the impact. So, understand this, and social workers have the greatest responsibility to educate people about it, come up and also see that it is there part of every other module that you are preparing or training, whether it is for teachers, whether it is for students, whether it is for adolescent groups. This information must be given to them, that you cannot destroy nature and be protected against disaster. It is not possible. You will have to protect, nourish nature so that they become an enabling force and not as such a traumatic events. Then the awareness programs, we need to tell people why we need to do certain things, and that you can do only normal time. So this is the most, prevention is always better than response. So prevention work, social workers definitely should take the leading role. Small newsletters, programs, when you are working with people, tell them again and again, remind them that their whatever their intervention with nature will definitely bring back the same type of stress or same type of disaster that we saw. Same thing with programs, awareness programs. We'll have to have, this is a very important area where we have to take it to the school children also. Even the graduates, students who are doing their graduates, we find that this amount of knowledge is not there, is not given. It becomes maybe a part of your class, but otherwise, we are not really teaching children, adolescents, youth groups, and adults about the impact of meddling with environment. So that is a very great scope for social workers. Then what as training in disaster management? Immediately after tsunami, Andrew is here, he will tell us that how people spend time and money in teaching all the stakeholders. I know that everyone was made to participate in a training program. Now, what happened? We didn't consolidate it. Those modules, I don't know, God alone knows where it went. And we didn't continue it. After 2 months, we stopped and went back to our old ways of behaving. So, this training in disaster management is a must. Just like you learn about first aid, you must also learn about how to prevent and what you do immediately. What should be our response scheme. So then see, the other thing is why I'm putting school infrastructure is children need some amount of sameness. That is, their, of course, their, see, for instance, their huts, their homes are all washed away. Now, where they are now in a temporary shelter, the only thing the child will keep on asking you is, when can I go home? When can I go home? So they have to relate to a known area, a known place, a known person. So unless, at least if we really re-equip the schools, they know that the school is a safe place. They can go back to school, whether they learn or not, whether they are actively participating in the learning program or not. The same set of environment brings back some amount of calmness, soothing to the children. So that is very, very important. And mental health training, all of us speak about it all the time. Everybody is arranging counseling classes, this, that, everywhere. But are we touching the mind through these programs? I should say no. The same, we see the same amount of trauma. How come? So these mental health programs during non-disaster time, that's what is more important, that as a module or that as a piece of information must be internalized, and that we'll have to take it to the children. So this is very, very important. Then parental training, equally important, because they must know how to take care of the child. 2 years, 3 years, they're constantly crying, asking for attention, not sitting in one place, going here, there. How are we going to keep them? And what is the method that the parent, what is the precaution that the parents will take? See, the Kumbhakonam fire accident involving the children was a great learning. How can we allow children to be cooped up in a place and with and the burning fire in the same room? Now the school education department was active 1 year. They went on inspection, they had a committee, then we all forgot. Now also you see that especially in metropolitan cities like Chennai, during the school time you will see that share auto has 20 children, one sitting on top of the other. All their bags are on the top of the whatever they use, no, that auto come, jeep come, or mode of transport, all that. So again, it is not a stable mode of travel, but we all do the same thing. The parents are just not aware that this is not the right way to send children. Now, how many children travel in that? I live in front of a school in Ananagar. So every day in the morning and evening, my BP goes up, mainly because I see the children coming, being pushed inside, sitting literally on top of one another. So we are now inviting a disaster. So we have to be, the parents need to be educated, very, very important. Then formation of children's groups, we are forming children's groups, but what is the agenda? Everybody has some agenda or the other, which they want to take it forward through the children's group. Not like this. Every group, as a social worker, wherever you go and form groups, because this is the best method of involving children in a preparedness, in response, and also in all rebuilding activities. Children are great source of enthusiasm. So if you can only touch them and form them as a group, able to represent their community, nothing like that. All this we can do only in non-disaster time. Now, disaster time, immediately after 1 month, 2 months, all of us social workers are very active. After that, we forget. Then when you ask them, they say, we have a regular work. No, madam, how can we be doing this? You will have to make this part of your regular work. Wherever you are doing, spend some time, spend some effort, and see that the children are given appropriate messages, because they are the people who are going to take us to the future, and they should, especially the environmental messages, that we have to give children, and we have to give it in a formal manner. Now, who is having children's group? Only those who are working with poorer communities. Does that mean that the children in so-called rich families, well-to-do families, they do not need this information? Of course, they also do. Why are we not forming groups of them? Because we feel that they need not know, or they know already. No, they also don't know. They are not being taught all these things in the posh schools where they are studying. This is a common piece of information. How do you protect yourself? How can you take preventive steps? And how will you see that these type of disasters do not happen again and again? How can I protect my forest? How can I protect the animals? How can I protect the waterways? How can see to it that the garbage is not piled, or see to it that the rivers are not polluted? So all these things are very important, and that the best way of giving it is through the children's groups. So social workers have a great amount of responsibility in prevention. Why I am saying this is, everyone will come. See, every time after the or during times of disaster, you see so many people participating. So we as a generation, or we as a country, we are positively, what shall I say, engaged or positively motivated to work in times of disaster. That is there with us. It's a strength. But the fact is, we forget about it immediately after the disaster has been responded to. After that, we are not doing any effort, and that is where the role of the social workers are very, very important in prevention and in responding in a scientific manner. Sorry. Yeah. So I close here with a request that since you are going to go through a seminar on preparing for this disaster management, find out, at least take one message to your memory. Keep it, let it be there. And at least next time when a disaster takes place, do something. Do something, do some action. Even now you can do it. See, you see, COVID. Now we think that the disease is gone, and we are seeing people once again without any protective mask or in such a huge numbers. Is it necessary? Is it healthy? Again and again, the government is talking to us about these type of protective measures, because that's the only thing that's going to protect you from getting infected with COVID. But you see that people are not taking it. So we will have to take it to the community, people education. It must become part and parcel of their training that you are all giving. That's why I am not going into details about being how do you respond. You can respond in any manner that you like. Generally, the responses from the community has always been good, but we are lacking only in prevention and the larger aspect of rehabilitation or rebuilding the community after the disaster is over. So this is the most important area of intervention, and this is the best way that social workers you can display your skills and your knowledge in these two areas. So, thank you the opportunity, and I hope, as I said earlier, you will take at least one message from this 3 hours seminar and apply at least one action at your level, at your neighborhood, so that you know that response is difficult but is coming forth, whereas prevention and rehabilitation have to be required more effort from your side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was a very comprehensive and eye-opening session from you. So we have few questions here, ma'am.
Yes, yes, you
So,
can.
so the first question is from Ms. Namrata from first year. She
Mm.
asks, how can social workers ensure equality of service delivery to a vulnerable population during a disaster?
You cannot ensure, but you can be the pathway where it reaches the most vulnerable. So if at all you know what happens immediately after disaster, there is clamoring from everyone, group of doctors, teachers, village panchayat people, everyone wants something. So you have to be louder than them and justify why you want services for that particular place. So identifying vulnerable groups is the first step. And then you as a social worker, you will have to represent them and see that the services are reaching that particular place. Now there are so many mediums, so in which you can share where the most vulnerable groups are living or what is their difficulty that they are facing. Only by doing that you can see to it that the services reach them.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Actually, after the floods last, I remember that people who wanted to come and give, they had lorry loads of reliefs, and the government instituted a check post, and they have to say where you have to go. So that made that the services were sent to all parts of the district. It had its own positive points. So if you can organize something like this, it will be very good.
So we will have to find those who are in need and then channelize the products there.
Yeah, you'll have to quickly find out.
Yes, ma'am. The second question is, do you think this pandemic threw light on the importance of social workers in our state at least? Because we witness more and more social workers being in the limelight for their interventions during this pandemic. So what is your take on that, ma'am?
It's good, no? At least you are being recognized. Nobody is finding fault with social workers. Social workers have that extra skills in terms of empathy and response. So naturally, their services should be appreciated. Why? What is the difficulty in that?
We hope that it will be appreciated and acknowledged in the future also, ma'am.
Yes, but you don't do service hoping that you will be recognized.
Yes, ma'am.
To
So
do work, you are training yourself to be a social worker. You are not training yourself to be a, what shall I say, a corporate person who is so keenly looking at their branding, their name. You are not that. social workers are one large group, and nobody is recognized.
Yes, ma'am.
And you will have to learn to live with that.
Yes, ma'am. So the next question is, can you give your insight on the long-term damage that a disaster can do to children health and cognitive functions, and how can it be prevented?
You will have to go back to the different types of disasters. For instance, in tsunami, children lost both their parents. That's an irreparable loss. And recently, in the floods, so many their pets were washed away. That again is very, very important for you and me. It's only a dog, no, why? But for the child, for whom it's a very great emotional impact. So that's we'll have to. And as I said earlier, preparedness. You will have to prepare them. Why do you always say that? You will have to prepare them, give them enough information so that they are alert, and the long-term consequences can be handled by you always promoting a positive attitude, and things will recover. So that is the piece of information you must always insist, and that is a very tricky road, because which side, one side it is activism, always saying it's not been done, this is not right, this is not right. Then this side is the service sector who are already doing. So the two sectors must help each other, not at war with one another.
Yes, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. The last question for the
Yes.
session is, with your wisdom and experience, can you give us some insight on how we can work on our professionalism in social work and how we can do better interventions? As you mentioned, it should be part of our daily work rather than just responding to the
Yeah,
disaster. So, can you give us some tips on how we can work on that?
definitely. Remember the lessons when what you learn. If at all you come to class, and if at all you attend the classes, and it is not just information that you are learning to write an exam. See the attitude and perspective that what's get built in you in 2 years. That is the best information that you can ever have. Because any improvement, anything that's happening, you can learn quickly. It's available everywhere now with advances in in the internet and things like that. You can learn the facts, but the attitude and your level of empathy, these two are, you will have to consciously build in yourself. That is the professionalism. Your professionalism is not built on some ideas. It should be built on social work principles of equality. Somebody was asking me equality, empathy. These are very, very important that you should always remember. And during times of a crisis, what you do tells us what your values are. So this should become your personal values. That is the only way that you can shine as a professional. And forget the classroom. Once you come out and then you become like an ordinary person trying to be in the group, do things that everybody is doing, then you cannot say that you are a great social worker. Professionalism is very important. Professionalism is not only learning to be with a computer sitting on table and talking about everything. If you really want to be a social work professional, go to the field, mix with the people, talk to them, understand their way of life, understand what is the most difficult thing for them in life, and from there take that knowledge and come here and look at strategies that you can do to help them.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you so much, ma'am. It was
Thank
really
you. All the
learning and
best.
informative. Can we
All the best.
request you to give your concluding remarks for the session, ma'am?
Me,
Yes, ma'am.
just now I said no. I wish you all the best. I did my social work nearly 45 years ago. Then at that time, the social work course was not recognized. We hardly had 11 people in our classroom. And there were very few institutions offering social work. But things have changed. There's a great demand for social workers, and social workers are very nicely recognized by all sectors. So go with the conviction that your duty as a social worker is to see that equal opportunities are given to everyone, and that you will rather be on the side of people promoting than on the side of people who are profiting. I think that's what is important.
Thank you once again, ma'am. It
Thank
was
you,
really
and wish
very
you,
inspiring
wish you all the very best in life.
to hear from you.
Yes.
Now we'll move on to the next session by our Professor Andrew Sesuraj. Now I request Ms. Shambhavi from second year to introduce our speaker to the audience.
Good afternoon, all. Professor Andrew Sesuraj is Assistant Professor of PG and Research Department of Social Work in Loyola College, Chennai. He has completed his MA Social Work in Loyola College, and he has also completed SET and UGC NET examinations. He was a faculty and head in charge for PG Department of Development Management in Madras School of Social Work from October 2013 to July 2015. Some of his notable career achievements were he represented UN team as child protection consultant in the preparation of post-disaster needs assessment report for Kerala government in 2018. He participated in the second, third, and fourth round of evaluations on the effective implementation of JJ and POSH Act by Supreme Court of India between 2016 and 2018. He also holds honorary positions in UNICEF as empaneled child protection consultant, as a life member and a general secretary in Professional Social Workers Association, and also as a state convener in Tamil Nadu Child Rights Watch. He has organized various training programs and has an expertise knowledge in social mobilization, team building, project development and consultancy, national level event management. At present, he has made many COVID 19 interventions, such as volunteer coordinator in Greater Chennai Corporation COVID 19 Telecounseling Center, as a project in charge at Jiva Jyoti Zone 3 in Chennai Corporation COVID 19 Community Intervention Program, and also as a course coordinator in Tamil Nadu Child Rights Watch COVID 19 Learning Lab. We are very proud and happy to welcome you, sir. The session is over to you.
Thank you. Okay, so happy to be part of this conference, especially speaking about the role of social workers during disasters. When there is a disaster, the heart is always overflowing, and people, because of the kind of loss, because of the kind of the problems people are facing, the good-hearted people always come to the fore. Okay, we have seen this right from Gujarat earthquake, the first one as a social worker I came across, and then tsunami, and then now we have continuous. Okay, in our days when I was a student, I remember it was there'll be a disaster once in 3 or 4 years maximum, but now it's almost every year. It's almost every year we come across disasters. So now the role of social worker is much different from any person who comes as a volunteer. Of course, the role of volunteers are very important because that's where the first initiation comes in. But the social worker role comes in to make it more comprehensive, to make it more sustainable, to make it more relevant and reliable. So that's where, as Madam Kumar Babu was telling, Girija Ma'am was telling, that the role of social workers in creating an equal platform that is justice to the ones who do not have, especially the vulnerable. Okay, there are, for example, when Chennai floods, there are a humpty number of people who have been affected. But people who have can spring up. They can immediately find a way to recoup. But for those who are vulnerable, unless we as social workers lend a hand, their life will be catastrophe, a disaster in the disaster. Okay, so that's where our role as social workers are different from those who are volunteering during this kind of disasters. We have different phases when we work on disasters. For example, immediately it should be the rescue phase. In rescue phase, we need to identify, we need to work with the government machinery, the community systems in place. After tsunami, as Madam was telling, we have created a hell lot of systems. Okay, after the early warning systems were in place, community level disaster mitigation committees were formed, and they were given training. 1 year they were everywhere. You can see boards with names in every community, what needs to be done if there is a disaster. Okay, so immediately there are committees. Okay, so we have to approach those committees, help with those committees, identify areas which are vulnerable, and help in the rescue. And the next will be the relief. Once you have rescued, our role is on providing relief. What is required? Especially, I don't know, in the last 10 years, the relief is becoming more sensible. We have seen that during the initial days, whenever there is a disaster, we give them a dhoti and a sari, and then rice. We never considered children, or even when we give provisions, we do not consider about the sanitary needs of women. But now you would have seen that the relief measures are more sensible. We look at the different vulnerable populations and those needs, and that's also because of the kind of social work intervention that is went inside, and the kind of social work intervention that helped in documenting the practices, learning from the mistakes, the learning from the disasters. Now we are becoming more and more specific and sensible during our rescue and rehabilitation. The next is rehabilitation. Once we have rescued, relief is provided. Now rehabilitation, moving forward and rebuilding. After the Bangladesh floods, there was something called, a concept was developed by social workers called building back better. A social work intervention cannot be rebuilding the same community. Madam Girija ma'am would know. Okay, after tsunami, immediately after tsunami, we started. No, I was working with 20 different fishermen community from Kasimedi to Ennur. So we went in, as we work with different communities, we immediately go and approach the women. We approach, because it's easier to approach women, and we approach them, and there was no response. But then we identified, okay, this is not, it's going to be, okay. And we worked with the men, because in fishermen communities, it's a men panchayat. Okay, they have the fishermen panchayat, that is more, it's a close-knit community. Okay, we started working with the men. But at the same time, we know we have to work with women. But in the fishermen communities at that time, the voices of women are never heard. But we made a point that whenever we have a planning meeting, we will sit with the women. The women should also be part of the discussions. We created children's clubs, as Madam was telling in Kadalur, they created, okay, children's movements. Okay, and I was also part of this kind of interventions. So we made sure that the voices of women and children are heard in those communities where it was not a way of life. So when we helped in building back better, we made sure that the things that were missing in those communities was addressed. So we tried to build back better than what it existed before. That should be the social work intervention, the triple B, building back better. It can be based on infrastructure, it can be based on community models, or it can be based on social values. Okay, develop from the existing and move towards the best. So building back better than what it existed before. So that is what we call it as building back better. And for social workers, it's very important that we create that into replicatable models. For example, in the introduction that was given to me, there was interesting that I was part of the UN committee where the PDNA, post-disaster needs assessment. Okay, this was a model created. So there is already a framework. So now after every disaster, you can take this framework, the PDNA framework, and you can start working on it. So the PDNA framework will give you how to rebuild, how to do a need assessment and how to rebuild. So there is a model. So whenever a social worker does an intervention, we have to make sure that it becomes a replicatable model, and for that we need to document it. The process documentation is important. Once we do this documentation, it is also equally important that the entire intervention is participatory, democratic. This is we don't have the beneficiary benefactor model anymore. In social work, in the initial days, there is more of benefactor beneficiary model, where we are looked as benefactors out of goodwill. We go and give something, the charity approach, benefactor beneficiary. Now it is no more. Now they are partners in development. We look at people as partners in development, partners in change. So it has to be participatory. The solutions has to come from them. So the social worker has to make sure that the model is participatory. That is democratic decision making. When you identify these are the areas that needs to be focused, we identify these are the elements that need to be supplied, make sure you make them participate. You listen to them. I still remember after tsunami, okay, immediately after tsunami, we had a campaign. We collected old material, old clothes, and then we took it to the fishermen communities. No one came forward. No one came forward to collect, because the fishermen community is more a community which looks themselves as very dignified community. You can see them living in huts, a hamlet of 100 families, and if you see there, you will see a lot of huts. Only of late, after tsunami, the government gave them constructed houses under different projects. Different NGOs constructed them different houses. But with all this, in a community of 100 families, you can see the temple festival. Every annual temple festival is conducted with an expense of more than 10 lakh rupees every year. They spend so much on the temple festival, because for them, they don't see themselves as poor. Okay. So when I took the old clothes, no one was ready. So then we understood, okay, this is not the way we have to. So we identified the dignity of the community. Okay. When I extend support, when we extend support, when you extend support, it's important that the dignity of the worth of the individual, the social work principles we have studied cannot be waived just because they are victims of disaster. Your principles of social work, your principles of case work, your principles of group work, whatever you have studied, the values have to be practiced in every step. Understand the culture of the particular community where you work. You cannot just go and say, okay, I have come and this is what mine. For example, when you go to a village, you cannot take your own jeans and t-shirts, girls. Okay, now things are changing, but I'm just giving you for an example. Okay. So when you go and give them, don't go with breads, because they are not for comfortable breads. Though in the initial days, when they cannot cook, the breads can be helpful. But when you make them self-reliant, they need rice, culturally relevant. And the next important element that you have to see is social workers need to be the voice as we intervene with the people, as we work with the people, you be the voice. That is where we have to be different. The volunteers who come, the good heart people who come, the corporates who come, okay, they will come and deliver what is required. Yes, but one area we have to be different is you being the voice. When I say being the voice, advocacy, social work, advocacy, social action. Okay, so we need to be the voice and take these concerns of the people to the government, to the state, to the community, because it's always not always with the government. For example, if it is not, if the women's voices are not heard in the community, you be the voice of the woman in the community to the heads of the communities. If the voices of the disabled, differently abled, if they are not heard, if they are not visible, you make it visible. If the concerns of the transgender community is not addressed in the community, you take it to the community. Tell them there are certain groups which are unrepresented. So you have to be the voice of the voiceless. And at the same time, when you work with the community, you can also work with the corporates or the good heart people. You be the voice and tell them what is required, what kind of intervention is required. Because you have the participatory rapid appraisal methods. We have the tools for community mapping. And with these tools in hand, we can be the voice telling those come to work with the community, to tell them what is required, what is the real need, what is the need that needs to be immediately addressed. And then it's also important that you create awareness on how to ensure that this communities are to be addressed. When new people come in, tell them how to address this community, how to work with this community, train them, capacitate them, provide them the required support, so that the interventions provided by the volunteers are dignified and worth, and then is sustainable, and then it leads to building back better. Develop policies. The experiences we come across has to be converted into a policy for action, a policy to be implemented, a policy for government to implement. In the introduction, I was introduced that I was part of the telecounseling. Okay, initially, immediately after March 24th, when the government of Tamil Nadu, government of India, and then government of Tamil Nadu announced the lockdown, within 1 week, the social work intervention worked, and a counseling, the psychosocial counseling, telecounseling system was set up in Chennai Corporation. Madam Daman Queen also was with us. Okay, immediately we set up, and that was handed over back to the Chennai Corporation. Now it's still going on. We created a model. That's a policy intervention. From that, all the other interventions, based on whatever we have experienced over the telecalls, phone calls, immediately those were converted into projects. And whatever you see today as intervention by the Chennai Corporation has started from the telecounseling center. Based on the calls we receive, those calls are converted into plans, actions. And that's where social workers can make a difference. And when we speak about rebuilding, the rebuilding should be based on disaster resilience model, climate adaptability, because these two are the key now, the resilience and the adaptability. Okay, we have to be adapt because the climate change is here, whether you like it or not, whether we have been working for long to reverse the climate change. But whatever is happening now is happening. It's going to happen. We cannot stop. So we need to build the resilience power. So when you rebuild a community, a resilient community has to be rebuilt. And it is also important that it has to be sustainable. The resilience you create has to be sustained. And we cannot just, for example, now we have come across the floods, Niravan, Puravi. And then we cannot stop. Okay, I'm going to work for the floods. No, we do not know what else will come here. So we need to do a mapping, community mapping, and make sure that the hazards are mapped. That's where the social workers can be different from the others. While the others deliver, we create. That's where the social workers are different from the others. Unless you prove to be different from the others, you will not have any work. That's where the social work profession is different from the others. If you want to be different, if you want to be recognized, if you want the work you did is making sense, and if you want to prove that you are professionals, the work we do has to be different from the others. And that has to be replicatable, that has to be sustainable, and that has to be a model that speaks for itself. With this word, I stop here and I leave it for questions.
Thank you so much, sir. It was very eye-opening to know where social workers differ and how we are supposed to create interventions rather than delivering. So I'm sure all of us will take this forward and think on that perspective. Now we'll move on to the question and answers. We request the participants to drop your questions for our speaker, Professor Andrew Sesraj, in the chat box.
Since it's lunchtime, I think I will not have much questions.
So we have a question here.
Yes.
So since you touched upon on the importance of resilience, it is something that is being discussed globally in order to bring about preparedness for disaster management. So how do you think resilience in India would work? Because how would you describe the resilience of Indian society as such, and how we can work on promoting resilience in the community, sir?
We have been very good models. For example, after Chennai floods, within a week, we have sprung back. For example, take for COVID-19. No, nothing stopped us. We had a catastrophic impact on the economy. But nothing stopped us. So the resilience is we need to continue to work with the community, okay, to build the strength, to build the capacities, build the skills, build the infrastructures, so that the resilience works. That's where we need to develop. Okay, the resilience is always there. Okay, the survival instinct. Resilience is nothing but the survival instinct. Okay, how the resilience is going to be sustainable and is sustained in the community is where we need to make difference. For that, we need to create systems in place, communities in place, participatory methods in place, so that the community is prepared to face it and to spring back. Have I answered your question?
Yes, sir. So we would like to know a few of your tips on what kind of skills as budding social workers we have to develop in order to look at the problems or the community from the perspective that you shared with us now.
the skills to be a social worker is much enough. Okay, the skills that is required to be a social worker is much enough to be an effective disaster response specialist. Okay, so first is, as we all know, listening, analytical skills. Okay, when you get into a community, while the others look at the damage that has created, the damage that has happened in the community, what is important is for social worker to see where there is need, who are the vulnerable. I see 4 people in front of me, but I have only one bread in my hand. Identify the one who needs more. When I say more, it's not about an able-bodied man standing and a differently able to standing. I should go towards the different because he needs more support. The able-bodied man can find a way. Your analytical skills. Okay. The skills you learn as social worker is much enough to be an effective social worker in the field of disaster management.
Thank you so much, sir. That was indeed a great session, and I'm sure all future social workers that we are here are very much inspired with your idea and approach towards disaster management with all the work that you have done and you have shared with us today. We would like to hear your concluding remarks for the session, sir.
My friends, okay, as you all aspiring to be professionals in social work, okay, as Girija ma'am has also said, social justice is the key for social workers. We might come across hundreds of victims. Every victim needs support, but we have limited resources. So we need to focus ourselves where we are needed the most. So make sure that your concentration, your support is extended, prioritized to the ones who need the most. I'm not saying that you should not help others, but focus on who needs your hand. Focus on the one who needs your hand, without which he or she might not survive. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. On this note, we have come to the end of today's session. Now I request Ms. Agnes from second year to deliver the vote of thanks.
Good afternoon to all. I deem it a great honor to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks to all who have helped us in making this webinar a resounding success. I, on behalf of the PG Department of Social Work Shift 2 and Pegasus Students Forum, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to the honorable delegates who blessed us with their presence and took out valuable time from your busy schedule. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation to Mrs. Girija Kumar Babu for her work. Also, I would like to extend a special thanks to Mr. Andrew Sisraj for inspiring us. The way they explained the topic, role of social workers in disaster management, is exemplary and was indeed thought-provoking. Thank you, ma'am, and thank you, sir. I would like to extend a special thanks to NIDM and coordinator, ma'am, Dr. Ajinder Walia, for your constant support and cooperation. I express my gratitude to our beloved principal, Dr. S. Raja Samuel, for his constant encouragement and support. I would like to thank our HOD, PG Department of Social Work Shift 2, Dr. C. Francis, for his moral support and guidance. My gratitude is also due to our webinar coordinators, Professor Damien Queen and Professor Priya Doris, and other faculty members of Shift 2 for backing us and making this webinar a great success. As no program can become successful with a single person, so I extend my big thanks to our Pegasus Forum members and all our volunteers for their support for making this event successful with their contribution. Last but not least, I thank all the wonderful students and the participants for your valuable presence and active participation. Once again, I thank you all for your cordial cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Agnes. The feedback link is circulated in the chat box. We request all the participants to fill the feedback link to mark your attendance for today's session. The next session will be held on 16 December, next Wednesday. The topic of the session would be spirituality and disaster. We look forward to having you all with us on the next session. Until then, have a great day. Thank you.